All right, so today we're jumping into a really intense and honestly pretty brutal time in ancient Israel's history. It's the period right after their legendary leader, Joshua, has died. Now, you'd think the conquest of the Promised Land was a done deal, but as we're about to see, that story was far from over. And that's the big question, right? When you lose a figure that massive, that unifying, you're left with this huge power vacuum. Who's going to step up? Who will lead? How do you even finish a fight this big? For the tribes of Israel, it's a moment where everything is just up in the air. So let's dive into this new fight. Look, Joshua's victories were absolutely monumental, but the job wasn't finished, not by a long shot. There were still Canaanite strongholds all over the place, and the tribes had to figure out who was going to be brave enough to step up and lead the next charge. So, what do you do when you don't have a clear leader? Well, the Israelites go straight to the top. They ask God directly, all right, who's on deck? Who's up first? And this one simple question basically kicks off this entire new era of fighting without a central commander. And the answer comes back, Judah. The tribe of Judah gets the call. They're chosen to spearhead the whole operation. And their campaign is a story of, well, brutal success. But as we're going to find out, it's not the whole story. And wow, they come out swinging. Their very first battle at a place called Bezek is just an overwhelming victory. 10,000 enemy soldiers are killed. Just like that. Right away, Judah lets everyone know they are not messing around. After the battle, they capture the local king, a guy named Adoni-Bezek. And what happens next is pretty gruesome, but there's a crazy twist. It's all directly connected to his own reputation for cruelty. We're talking about a serious case of poetic justice. So get this. After they cut off his thumbs and big toes, you'd expect him to curse them, right? But he doesn't. He looks at his own situation and basically says, yep, I had this coming. He admits that he did the exact same horrible thing to 70 other kings. It's this wild moment that really sets a major theme for the whole book of Judges. What goes around definitely comes around. So Judah is just on a roll. They're riding this huge wave of momentum. They hit Jerusalem, set it on fire. They conquer Hebron. They keep pushing on toward Debir. I mean, from the outside looking in, you'd think, wow, these guys are absolutely unstoppable. They're going to finish this thing no problem. But then, right in the middle of all this warfare, we get this fascinating little family story. The old warrior, Caleb, says, hey, whoever captures Debir can marry my daughter, Aksa. His nephew, Othniel, pulls it off. But here's the cool part. Aksa isn't just some prize. She's smart. She gets her land and immediately goes, wait a minute, this is bone dry. So she goes back to her dad and cleverly negotiates for the springs of water too. It's a great little reminder that these were real people with real lives and real concerns. Okay, so everything's looking great for Judah, right? Well, this is where the story takes a turn. That triumphant narrative, that perfect record of victory, it's about to hit its first major snag. And here's the deal. It all came down to geography and technology. Up in the rugged hill country, Judah's fighters were dominant, no problem. But down on the flat, open plains, that was a whole different ballgame. Why? Because their enemies had iron chariots. Think of it like bringing swords to a tank fight. These chariots were the cutting-edge military tech of the day, and Judah just had no answer for them. They hit a wall they couldn't break through. And this problem, this failure to finish the job, it wasn't just a Judah thing. As we start looking at what the other tribes were doing, this really troubling pattern starts to emerge. A pattern of stalling out, of failing, and maybe worst of all, of making some really dangerous compromises. Take the tribe of Benjamin, for example. Remember how Judah attacked Jerusalem? Well, the Benjamites were supposed to finish the job and clear out the Jebusites who lived there. And they didn't. They just sort of let them stay. This is a huge deal. They basically left a hostile fortress right in the middle of their own territory, a problem that's just going to keep causing trouble for generations. And the pattern just becomes undeniable. You go down the list, Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun, Asher, Naphtali. It's the same story, different tribe. They all fail. And they either settle for just living alongside the Canaanites, or they turn them into forced labor. Either way, it's a massive compromise, and it's going to come back to bite them. Big time. And it's interesting, you can see different kinds of failure. For a tribe like Asher, the failure is almost cultural. They end up living among the Canaanites, kind of blending in and losing what makes them distinct. But for the tribe of Dan, it's even worse. They get straight up defeated in battle and pushed back into the hills. So one is a slow compromise, the other is an outright military loss. Both are bad news. So where does all this leave us? Well, it's definitely not the clean sweep they had envisioned. What they're left with is a messy, complicated, and frankly dangerous reality. The mission is half finished at best, and that leaves the entire nation in a really precarious spot. You can't just call the final result a win or a loss. It was this messy mix. Sure, you had a slice of real conquest, but that was matched by uneasy coexistence, short-sighted compromise, and even outright containment. Where Israelite tribes were the ones penned in, the one thing the land wasn't was unified. And that is the ultimate takeaway here. This failure to complete the conquest didn't create peace. It created a patchwork nation riddled with hostile neighbors and unresolved conflicts. And this unstable foundation is the perfect breeding ground for the chaotic, violent cycle we're about to see throughout the era of the Judges. So we end with this huge question hanging over everything. What happens when a mission is left half-finished? What are the consequences when victory is declared too early and the Promised Land remains a battleground? The rest of the Book of Judges is the long and often bloody answer to that question.